Next presentation is the Million Browser Botnet. Two speakers who need little or no introduction, so let me just turn it right over to them. Jeremiah Grossman, Matt Johansson.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending our presentation today. We're pretty excited about doing this here. We've been working on this for 6 months, and all too anxious to share off what we got to show today. So, Black Hat, I just want to say thank you for having us. Again, we come back every year. We love this event. Thank you for the Black Hat staff. You guys rule. And hopefully everybody's going to have a lot of fun in this particular presentation. So it's going to go by real fast. We're going to have a lot of fun. Just a little bit of background on the company that we work for. We work for White Hat Security, founder and CTO.
I'm manager of the Threat Research Center.
And we mostly do during the daytime at White Hat is we break into websites, find vulnerabilities in them, and do that on mass scale. But we get to have some research time, and today we're going to start cracking browsers and use that to crack websites. So we're going to bring the whole web security full circle. Just a little bit about us. We do get around a bit, but founder CTO, actually my first Black Hat presentation was in 2002, so I've been doing this a while. So it's been a pretty fun ride, and so most of the time I'm either doing research, help with product development, and presenting up here.
Yep, and I have a background in penetration testing and application security. I started in our Threat Research Center just hacking websites, and kind of moved up to heading an army of hackers myself. So I get to do all this cool research stuff. I'm hiring a lot. If you're looking for jobs, come talk to me.
All right, so let's get this party started. All right, so I don't think there's a single person in this room that hasn't been on the web today, but maybe this is Black Hat, maybe you weren't connected to the internet at the time. But when you go home, everybody here, everybody you know, everybody you interact with is going to be using a browser. It's just part of modern everyday life. And I'm going to describe for you a little bit what that means and the way the web is designed to work. And that's going to be the critical piece of understanding here, is that everything we do, we're not really hacking stuff. We are using the web the way it was meant to be used. We're just going to use it for our own purposes.
Yeah, let's just apologize outright. We don't really have a solution for anything we're going to talk about today. Sorry.
Yeah. This is Black Hat. Yeah. All right. So when you visit a web page, and it doesn't matter what browser you're in, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Opera, IE, whatever the case may be, by nature of the way the web works, it has near complete control of your browser for as long as you are at that web page. When you surf to the next page, it has complete control. So that JavaScript on that page or that Flash on that page can force your browser to do basically whatever it wants. And any type of request, response to any destination on the internet or on the intranet. That includes cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery. Hopefully you guys have a basic understanding at least of what these are. Also clickjacking and 1,000 other browser tricks. But we're going to go over some reviews so you understand browser security, but that's the general idea. The browser we get to control without zero-day exploits, and there's nothing you can patch against.
If you don't know about cross-site scripting, you can ask Snake.
All right, so some overview of the stuff we're going to go briefly through because it's important for everybody to understand the state of browser security as it exists today. We're going to go through this list very, very quickly so you come to appreciate what we're talking about here. Because we're not talking about exploits that breach the browser walls, that land malware, the zero-day memory exploit stuff. We're just talking pure JavaScript that stays within the browser walls. So when you go to any website, most of them do. This screenshot here is from CNN. When you go to CNN, they have a metrics system on the site that forces your browser to make a request to metrics.cnn. And it has a whole bunch of information about your browsing environment, what browser it is, the version numbers, the plugins you have, operating system information, whatever you want. Because they want to know who's visiting their sites, what times of the day, using what technology. So that's very simple. Let's get a little bit more advanced. Let's talk about evil cross-site request forgery. JavaScript here is not necessarily required. So many of you might be running no script. Doesn't matter. We're going to do it with straight up HTML. So we can force your browser with JavaScript or HTML to hack any other website, upload illegal content, download illegal content, force your browser to search for anything that we want on any search engine, including Google. We can initiate bank wire transfers if you're logged into your bank, post offensive messages, and should we vote for Ed Snowden as Time Person of the Year.
The one that sinks home here also is, Justin Bieber is kind of embarrassing. We can get this trending and get your names on some lists, but probably some worse lists is probably child porn. That kind of sinks the message there with CSRF. Yeah, we could force you to download child porn.
So if there's guys from Google here that allow us to send about 1 million search requests for anything we want, just let us know. We'll do that. So the first line there, that's when we can force your browser to SQL inject any other website that we want, so we can make you a hacker and get you in trouble that way. We can force you to download torrents and make you a pirate and get all kinds of DMCA violations. Force you, like Matt said, search for a Justin Bieber fan club. We thought that was pretty embarrassing. For those that are familiar with Weave and the AT&T hack, of which he's now in jail for, cycling numbers and URLs, we're not going to go into legality of it, but we can make your browser do that too on any website that we want. And then also the last one there, it's kind of just a little voting example, but we can make your browser do all these things, and there's not much you can do about it. Then we got login detection here. You come to a website that we control, we can know what websites you're logged into: Google, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever the case may be. There's about 6 different techniques to pull this off in a browser. So we know what sites you're logged into, and it helps us make targeted attacks against your browser to the user. But this is a user-specific attack. Moving on, we can de-anonymize. Let's say you're logged into Twitter. Let's say you're logged into Facebook. If we can clickjack you, which is make you think you're clicking on something, but you're really clicking on one of our like buttons or our follow buttons, we can actually de-anonymize you and tell who you are. It's not just random person logged into Facebook or LinkedIn. This is the things we talked about. You click a link and we know your first name and everything you put on Twitter and LinkedIn. Just one click and we know who you are, right down to the city and everything in your profile information. One click.
You think some tracking companies or some advertisement companies might want to know your actual full name?
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's pretty valuable to them.
So these, again, we're just moving through history here. These are well-known things, well, amongst the black hat audience probably. We have intranet hacking here. So yes, we can force your browser to make connections. We can force your browser to make connections to the intranet and hack your DSL routers. First time we mentioned this was back in 2006. It is unfixed, still works great. We can force auto cross-site script you with auto frames. You come to our site, if we know a cross-site scripting vulnerability in a major portal, webmail provider or whatever, load up an iframe, auto cross-site script you, hijack your account, zip zap, you won't see it. And finally, actually we're going to get a couple of more here, we'll keep going fast through this stuff. We can load traditional malware. Everybody's familiar with this. You SQL inject to land iframes on particular web pages, so you insert content. So you go to these infected websites, they'll iframe in malicious malware content that exploits your browser and owns your machine. So these are possible attacks in the browser.
So these are some of the ones that we're going to focus on. So that's all history. Jeremiah's talked about a lot of that stuff in the past. There's other black hat talks about this. There's even talks about this kind of stuff, but the way that we distributed it is a little bit different. So this is some research that was about distributed computing using JavaScript to actually crack passwords. And the cool thing about JavaScript, besides being pretty easy to write, is that it's really, really fast. So in this particular research, he found a metric that you could actually crack or attempt to crack 100,000 MD5 hashes per second using JavaScript. So if you could distribute this JavaScript over a broad enough span, you could start farming out CPU and potentially get through a big pile of MD5 hashes really, really quickly. So this has actually happened. So these are some POCs. Ravan is one of the ones that actually does use the distributed model. It's not just showing that JavaScript can do it. This is actually distributed computing. You can download this today. The other screenshot there is just proving that JavaScript can very quickly, this isn't distributed by any means. It's just showing the speed of JavaScript cracking MD5 hashes. So this is using web workers. I think it's about 12, you said? 12 web workers to, and they're attempting about 60 to 70,000 passwords per second per web worker times 12. Do the math. And yeah, so this stuff is fast. It's been done. It's out there. You can grab it. But what we're focusing on is how we're going to distribute it.
So this was Black Hat last year. This came out, so we're going to leverage it.
So in that same vein, you can do, besides just password cracking, we could do denial of service. And this is the one that we really focused on in our research in the past couple months. We could force JavaScript to use things called cross-origin requests and web workers and HTML5 tools and a bunch of different methods to force as many requests as possible out of a single browser or a lot of browsers to a single website, right? So again, in this metric, there was found that they could do about 10,000 requests per minute sent from a single browser. Again, if you think big and distribute this, this number gets very large very quickly, and you can actually get some, big boy denial of service attacks via JavaScript.
All right. The important point on this particular slide here is that you can funnel a whole lot of web requests down a single connection pipe, but you can't scale it across multiple connections. So there's what's called a connection limit in the browser, and that's what we're going to talk about next. This is a tool called BrowserScope. It's at browserscope.com or .org. .org. And every browser has a connection limit, not for security, but for stability and performance. So you go to a website, and your browser will fire open a whole bunch of requests to that website to download the content. Most browsers will max out at 6 connections. And you've made it through the review, so we're going to tempt the demo gods here, and we're going to start doing some of this stuff live.
So most browsers about 6. Mobile browsers, we could see that we can get about 8. And if we invoke some HTML5 tricks and web workers, you can get about 7.
So I'm not going to rerun this, for save time, you just have to take my word for it here. So this is BrowserScope. They run a bunch of browser performance tests, so you can see what browsers actually support, which is versus what they say they support. So this sends a whole bunch of simultaneous connections to the server and tells you how many simultaneous connections it's able to send. So in this case, in Firefox, it was 6. So I'm going to go back to the slides here real quick, but because that's what we want to bypass. So when we started researching this stuff here, we found that Firefox, we didn't test this in IE, but Firefox is actually a way to circumvent the connection limit bypass, which allows us to scale out our denial of service requests. So if you see the code on the left there, what this does is when you go to a web page with this code, it loops 300 times and sends off a whole bunch of image requests to the same server. But it'll only send 6 at a time in the browser. So you only get 6 connections. When those are served back, the next 6 will go and the next 6 will go. But we found that the connection limits in the browser, at least in Firefox, were tied to the HTTP protocol handler. If we swapped it to FTP and put the port number of 80 to redirect it, we got a lot more.
No ceiling, right? So the magic number seemed to be about 400 before Apache went bye-bye with one browser.
So we can use one browser instance to kill Apache.
Important distinguishment here. So we are using FTP. It cannot speak HTTP, so we can't do a lot of the top of that list of proof of concepts. We can't do a lot of the CSRFs, but this is just connections. We're trying to open up as many connections as possible to a single website. So it's not really traditional denial of service where we're trying to get as many megabits or gigs per second per hour type thing. This is number of simultaneous connections allowed open.
So I'm running an Apache server on this laptop here. It's a plain vanilla Apache web server. It is version, if anybody cares, 2.4.4. It's just all basic, all defaults. It didn't change a thing. So in this particular screen here, we're going to focus on the first for loop there. That will loop up to 0. I'm going to set it here, let's say, just 100, and it's going to set up a whole bunch of image requests to the server, just looking for an image with a sleep of 3, meaning the server won't respond back for 3 seconds, just so you can see it build up here. So I'm going to load that up right now live, so you can see how this works. So you count 1, 2, 3, and the images start coming up because it won't fire all of them at the same time. So you kind of get the idea, right, that there's connection limits in the browser, and they're not coming all at once. So we can kill that.
So the other thing here is this is a performance feature in the browser. It's not a security feature. We happen to be able to abuse it in a security fashion, which you'll see in a few minutes. But the reason being exactly what you just saw. They didn't want all of those images to try to load at the same time for performance reasons and just use of the web.
So I'm going to reload this one more time. I forgot to point out one thing. So this is the Apache status here of this particular web server. Actually, I may loop this up here back up to 100. And I want you to watch the status screen in the bottom left. So if you notice in the bottom left, see the number of simultaneous requests down here, 7. So it's maxing out. So it's 1 for the browser window that I'm opening, and the other 6 images. So that is very, very important there. We're going to try to break the upper bound there with one particular browser. So kill this, drop this back down to 0. We don't need it anymore. Now, as I mentioned, way to bypass the connection limits in Firefox, we'll just loop that up to 100, is using FTP. Same host name, same everything, don't need a URL because it's FTP, it's not sending HTTP, so we're going to flip it. So now watch the bottom left when I reload this page. Boom, 100. Now, watch when I hit stop. They'll all go away instantly. See, what do you want to see, 100 to 1? Did you guys all catch that? All right, so now, as I was curious when we were testing this. Let's loop it to 400. So this is refreshing itself every second. So let's hit it. So 270, and it gets to a point where it'll start to panic and it can't serve up any more requests. So all you got to do is you load this code in a web page, an Apache browser, if somebody else runs into it, you point it, and you got 300-400 simultaneous connections. So right now it's having a difficult time serving right now. So kind of get the idea that you just loop it over and over again. You bypass the connection limits until Apache exhausts at about 250, 300 or so.
So this is all with a single browser. We're just using one browser, bypassing the connection limits and causing an Apache install some pain.
So I won't do it live because we have another live demo going in the background. What you see there is scrolling up. We have another system on the Amazon AWS system. I don't want to kill that with this DOS attack right now. I would prefer you see the other demos before I kill it. But this does work on a Red Hat Apache AMI that I loaded up. So let's go back. So now we know what we can do with Firefox at least. So we have some more capabilities, but in general.
So what are the benefits of hacking this way, right? So why not just do a traditional denial of service attack, try to get as many megabits per second as you can? So some of the conversations that came up when we were doing this research is, oh, well, it's not really a botnet because it's not persistent. And I think that's a benefit. It's not persistent. It goes away. There is no trace of this, right? So we put money in a machine, and the JavaScript gets served up, and then it goes away, right? In an ad network. We're going to get to this real quick. And it's very, very easy. The code, you saw the code. I'm pretty sure most of the people in this room could probably read the code that we wrote, right? It wasn't anything crazy, fantastic. And the other key point here is, like we said in the beginning, this is how it's supposed to work. This is the way the web is supposed to work. We're just loading images as quickly as possible. So whose problem is it to fix? I don't know, but yeah. So what we're going to focus on, though, is how to distribute this. So I kind of got a little ahead of myself. But these are all the kind of the historical ways that these kinds of malicious codes have been distributed throughout the past, right? Drive-by malware, email spam. We're not going to go over this stuff. This is, some of these are decades old. They work if you're trying to hack a user, right? But we need to think bigger on scale. So for our purposes, these were not big enough.
Yep. So we had all these ways to distribute our JavaScript, and that's the point. We could do a lot in JavaScript, but we have to get other browsers running it, a lot of them. And for this, we invoke the Crockford. For those that aren't familiar with Douglas Crockford, he wrote the book on JavaScript, so he figured he's a pretty good source for this information. So he says the most reliable, cost-effective method to inject evil code is to buy an ad.
Let's try it.
Let's try it. So how does an advertising network work? Because they get a lot of reach. So here's the ecosystem, if you will. First, you have the advertisers on the top that want to show you something, some kind of ad to buy flowers, a date, whatever. Right? And they have advertising, they have money to spend, but they need sites for it to go on. So they need to get it into the hands of publishers, those that run blogs, content websites, social networks, news sites. And there needs to be a bridge between the two, between the advertiser and the publisher. We call those advertising networks. So what the advertisers do for a little bit of money, they post an ad to an advertising network and it gets funneled out to the blogs and social networking websites. This could be images, pop-ups, JavaScript, whatever. And then when you run into it, when you see it, you're the little blue guys at the bottom. So this morning we went on to TMZ.
We're like, let's think of a site that has a lot of ads just for a cool screenshot. And this one we just couldn't leave out. That one in the bottom right just cracked us up because that's what we're doing. Is
ad serving done right.
And then if you guys can't read it,
at the bottom there it says see what's possible.
What's possible? I was like, I think we will.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had already done all the research when we found this, but it was just too perfect.
All right. So every spot on this page is an advertiser that could have loaded their JavaScript code in front of the users of TMZ. So they're using the TMZ's audience to do their bidding for just a little bit of money. So some examples of these advertising networks. You have AdSense and ClickSource and DoubleClick. We're not an advertising network.
We did a dry run here, and someone pointed out that our template might confuse people.
All right, so there's dozens, hundreds of these systems, and they all have different capabilities, different price points and things. Some allow arbitrary JavaScript in the ad, some don't. I was annoyed by the ones that don't, so I emailed them. And I said, I would like to add third-party JavaScript into your system. And one of the guys responded really quickly, like in 2 minutes, right? He says, the only third-party code we allow is that from a large ad-serving companies like DoubleClick and such who we trust.
And are already scanning their stuff on their side to prevent potential vulnerabilities.
Okay.
Let's just get a quick show of hands who trusts their advertising networks out there to find their own vulnerabilities.
All right. So that was nice. We got a bunch of emails like that. It was kind of funny.
0 hands went up, everyone in front.
Okay, so this is traditional advertising networks where you pay a little bit of money, and we'll get to some of the metrics, and you get ads served. There's a different type of network out there that we came across. We're going to purposely not give you the names of these because, well, we don't know if we're going to get in trouble for that, so you'll go find them. But this particular one doesn't serve ads. The way this particular system works is that you pay a little bit of money, and they have browsers, people in the network that will view your web page for a certain amount of time. So you buy browser time for pennies. So in this particular case, 10,000 minutes you can buy for about $12.50 converted. So 10,000 minutes of browser time.
So the important distinguishment here is that this is very useful for the password cracking and things like that. When you actually need time for your code to run and get through piles of passwords to brute force or logins to brute force or things like that. The regular advertising networks that are just trying to blast across a network, no guaranteed amount of time that your code is going to run. This ad will load on a page at some point. You're paying for that. But if the person sits there for a minute, 10 minutes, 2 seconds, no guarantee there. You're not paying for that. That we can use for the denial of service, right? But it might not be as reliable for the cracking and brute force type activities.
To give a point of context here at the bottom, 1 million minutes. So you can buy 1 million minutes, or it equals about almost 2 years of browser time for about $650. So it's good metrics. Now, the web runs on advertising. That's how all these free websites are paid for. So their reach is phenomenal for just pennies. So back to the agenda. We're going to focus on the last two. We've talked about brute force hash cracking. So imagine scaling this out on 1 million browsers, or you just add $650 and you can run password cracking for the equivalent of 2 years, or DDoS. And we're going to show you a couple of live demos there. But let's talk about some economics.
So yeah, to get into the economics of it, so we talked a little bit, you saw the screenshot of that one particular network of buying minutes. But as far as the ad networks go, there's some language that ad networks use that I had to figure out the hard way. They like to call them impressions, right? So, we're really looking at pennies on the dollar here. But the average number that we seem to run into over and over again throughout the past couple months is around 50 cents per 1,000 impressions. So when I say impressions, you guys think browsers, right? Like a bot. Like you get one person, like this ad loaded in this browser. We have control over this browser at this point in time. It's effectively a bot. So yeah, they call it impressions. We call them bots.
And there's no particular reason why bad guys, real bad guys, when they steal credit cards, they couldn't use stolen credit cards to buy minutes or buy impressions this way and leverage what we're doing here.
So these are some screenshots from the actual advertising network that we were using, so you guys can get a feel for the dashboard that we were kind of clicking around and trying to get our ads displayed in this network. So if we had it our way, we probably would have displayed an ad that just said nothing, probably blank or whatever, just run our JavaScript code. We don't care. We're not actually trying to be advertisers here. We want this to be as invisible as possible to the user and to the ad network so that they just let us go on our peaceful hacking ways of DOSing our own web servers. So again, you could see, for the first, I don't know how many months of this research, we hadn't even spent $10 yet. And we were already taking down our web servers and all this stuff. So you can really do pennies on the dollar here. You could set daily limits. You could do all the sorts of things that you would think you'd be able to do in an ad network. Pick specific keywords that you want your ads to focus on. Potentially pick geolocation, pick operating systems or browsers that you would like your ad to particularly focus on, mobile, non-mobile, all those kinds of choices. I just picked as broad as possible. I just wanted this ad to get everywhere. So I just picked, they made you pick a keyword, so I picked computers. So sorry, guys. But there was all the adult keywords. You can imagine what this side of the internet looks like. But yeah, on the bottom you can see some of the days. The first day of research, we actually got 15 clicks. That's return on investment there, guys. Come on. So I'll show you the ad. It's going to be even funnier once you see the ad. There's 15 people clicked it. But yeah, you can see the amount of money that we spent each day versus the amount of impressions. The second column is the amount of impressions that we got that day at any given time. So again, there's no guarantee of minutes here, but that's just at some point your code loaded in 8,326 browsers in this 24-hour period. Cool? So let's, how do we input this code, right? So a lot of the ad networks we went to, they just wanted to do a lot of it themselves. We picked this one because they let us do it. Yeah. So you can pick an image banner, great, like put an image up, give it a URL that when you click it, that's where it goes, or they give you the HTML JavaScript option. That sounds pretty good. So you can see we started out on the top, we had to go through this whole approval process. That was probably the hardest part of all this research was the approval process, not for the reasons that you would think. They happen to not be very good at reading JavaScript or even caring about JavaScript. What they actually cared about was if the ad looked pretty and worked like an ad. So I couldn't really go about our invisible way of just mystical JavaScript going on in the background. But you'll see in a second what got approved. So we started out doing the code that you saw Jeremiah tinkering with just straight up in the ad, which was fine. Here's the code. They saw it in this text box, got approved, no problem. But anytime we wanted to tweak something, we're doing research here, things change, like the URLs, or if we wanted to try something new, it had to go through a reapproval process. This didn't take long, but it was just getting annoying because sometimes they'd approve it, sometimes they didn't. Like, it was just getting really weird. At one point, I think their email application was stripping script tags, so all of the JavaScript stuff was going away. So I actually replaced it with, please put a less than sign here, please put a greater than sign here, and then they came back and said, your ad's not displaying properly, and it still had please put your less than sign here. Anyway, so this was the fun part of this. So we wound up changing it, and so instead of putting the code directly into the ad, we actually put just a little script source. So we just source it out to a JavaScript file on our side that it's going to call out to every time. We can change that file however many times we want, and no reapproval process. So once it's got approved, it was approved. End of story. Cool. So even if they did somehow hire people at these advertising networks that are really good at JavaScript static code analysis or something, we could just change it, right? We can just make completely benign JavaScript at first, get approved, cool, we're going to change this. It'd be really hard to keep up with us if you wanted to try that. You get that kind of thing, right? So here's the ads I tried to get approved. So they only approved one of these, and it was the one that fit, but I was lazy to go and find other pictures. So I just grabbed this picture off of White Hat's corporate website. It has no branding to White Hat whatsoever. It's just get a 30-day free trial, claim now. 15 people clicked. 30-day free trial of what? Who knows? Let's click it. Cool. They're out there, right?
It's free.
So,
right?
it's free, right? 30 days. I'll tell you the names later. All right, so de-anonymize them. So all of this was the same exact code through all these banners. There was more on the bottom here. You get the idea. They were just different shapes and sizes. And they just said, I'm sorry, we can't approve anything but this one because none of the other images fit, even though it was all the same JavaScript code that we were all doing sort of nastiness with. So that's the ad.
So what we did here, as Matt put up the code, he put a script tag that went to the top URL there. So as he mentioned, that we could just change our payload, our JavaScript payload, whenever we want, and not have to go through reapproval. So we didn't know how long these browsers were going to be viewing our ads on this particular ad network. So instead of looping to 100, 200, 300, we just looped it to 10,000 and hoped for the best.
We started small. We were like, okay, let's see if we can get them to make the connections to us, and we could see it on our end, right? So we actually got to see all the people who were approving us. Their requests would come out of their browser because we were only dealing with a few requests at the time. So it was like, oh, my ad's not approved. Oh, I saw a request. Oh, my ad's approved. Okay, cool. So now I know who that IP address is. But yeah, so we started small and then just wound up looping it. So we were trying to get a feel for, once we actually deployed this thing, how long was the code running? Because again, this is not the service that you're paying for guaranteed minutes, right? So we were trying to get a feel for, is it a few seconds? Are we just getting this one little burst? Or do we actually have some time here that we can play with some stuff?
So we're going to fly through some screenshots. The way to set up this particular this slide demo here is that when we got to Black Hat yesterday, Monday, we reset the servers. We reset it, and that's what you see in the bottom left here. This is Amazon AWS live running right now, and we reset the settings. So right now, We hit the advertising networks. Matt put money in the till. I kicked off the minute one, and we started to go and just wanted to measure the impact. So within 8 minutes, we had 4,130 total hits. These are not unique visitors. These are actual web requests. And with 1.9 megabits transferred, and 5 simultaneous requests. So we're going to start watching the minutes, the logs, the metrics as we click through this stuff. And what you see in the top left there, that's the web server logs as they're flying by.
So the first few slides that we're going to go through, you can hit next.
Okay.
But the number you're going to see crawling up for a little bit, the network that we were playing with that was buying the minutes, actually kicked in immediately. As soon as we hit go, it would go, right? So now, we are between 8 and 10 minutes, you saw a jump in about, 10 or 11,000 requests, right? That's all from just that one network. My ad, I put, you can just add more funds to an advertising network and it'll kind of peak and valley as it goes. So ours didn't kick in yet. This is all just from the browser minute network of the two at the same time.
We're 10 minutes in, 15,000 requests. And then we started seeing interesting things.
All right. So, yeah, we were looking at, this isn't a traditional advertising network. This is some weird pay for browser minutes. So you can actually give them money in exchange for browser minutes, or what you could do is actually offer up your browser time for browser credits, right? You can say, okay, I'm going to let my browser be a part of this. You can use my CPU time and my browser time as part of your little magic network here, and in return, you get browser minutes to use, right? We didn't do that. We just gave them money. That worked. It was like $12. But what we noticed, we were like, okay, let's get a feel for what's actually going on behind the scenes in this network. And we noticed, what kind of browsers are we working with? Can we start playing with that Firefox connection bypass that we saw? And we saw a bunch of Phantom.js calls come in. How many people are familiar with Phantom.js? Okay, just a few. Cool. So Phantom.js is actually a headless browser. So this isn't someone sitting at a web browser clicking around on their desktop. That's a robot. So someone's gaming this system, right? Phantom.js is used in a lot in unit tests and things like that. You can run it from the command line. But that's someone gaming the system to try to get minutes. So other people are abusing this in different ways, which was kind of amusing to us. So we thought we'd share that.
Because then we started abusing their bots.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't care that they're not a person sitting there clicking around, right? We just want their browser time. Cool. I'll take a Phantom.js browser any day, right?
All right, so now we're 15 minutes in and 28,000 requests. So we're starting to tick up. We're now 20 minutes in, 43,000 requests.
You'll also notice the total traffic is very small. We're just sending them to a URL that doesn't exist. So that's 8.5 megabytes of 404 pages is really what we're looking at.
22 minutes, 61,000. So we're starting to pick up a little bit here.
You see the concurrent requests? You remember what we were showing you guys earlier?
33.
That's starting to tick up to 33. That's it's getting there. It's not 6. It's not one browser.
We're 25 minutes in. We're 82,000 hits. Getting closer. Now we're, what do we got? 35 minutes in, 9 concurrent requests, 100,000. So we made 100,000 hits from the Matrix in 35 minutes. So then.
So then this is when, like I said, I put money in the till at the same time that he hit go, and it looked like it takes about half an hour to 45 minutes for the advertising network to kick in, and now we had both going at the same time. So we're starting to get those impressions rolling in. Again, we were putting in really, really small amounts of money until about today.
This is like $20.
This is, less than, I think I had a max of $10 a day spent. So, the first couple of slides here that you're going to see is, the amount that I gave for the day was $20. When we were taking screenshots in that couple, hour or two that we were sitting there watching this, probably $2.
And now we're pegged. Look at the simultaneous requests. We're pegged at 255. Apache won't serve any faster than that.
It's actually kind of hard to get these screenshots once we start doing this because that server page just doesn't want to refresh on us.
So we're at 130,000. We're servers maxed out. And then we decided, well, why 404 pages? Let's start taking up some bandwidth. So we pointed them towards downloading an application security specialist logo.
So we have a whole lot more certified asses out there for everyone. So then the megabits start shooting up, right? Instead of 8 and 10, we're at 117. This is right when we flip the switch.
117 megs. We're pegged at 255. The next one here, just a few minutes later, we're at 250 megs, still pegged. And then at about 1 hour elapsed, so about 20 minutes of images, we're up over a gig of transferred traffic. And then we decided, you know what, let's just let it sit for a while. Let's let it sit for 7 hours. We just let it bake. And now we're up to 432. What is this?
4 million.
4 million.
We just made the same mistake that we made the first time we did this. We went to lunch. So before we were just started playing with the advertising network. We had like 30,000 hits over a bunch of hours. We were still tinkering with our code. We finally hit that 10,000 number, and it was kind of taking a while for the advertising network to kick in. Jared and I went and grabbed lunch. We came back. We're like, okay, 300,000. So yeah, 50,000, 300,000. We're like, wait a second, that's an extra digit. So we had, we average when we actually crank this thing up, and we haven't really cranked it all. Like I said, we're spending pennies, so we haven't really cranked it up. If you wanted to start dumping a lot more money into this, you'll get a lot more impressions a lot faster.
We did. It's actually in the background.
yeah, it's kind of going on right now, and we've only even then kind of cranked it up. We're averaging about 1.5 million connections per hour, and that's continuously 256 concurrent connections. Say that 5 times fast. And so that's, our Apache server was really, really feeling it at that time.
So now we're at 117 or 114 gigs on Amazon, and I'm kind of like, I think the Amazon hosting is actually more expensive than the hack.
So hosting our server that we're trying to take down.
And then we let it bake for 18 hours total elapsed, and now we're up to 239 gigs transferred, 8.1 million requests.
So that was overnight, and so we are kind of noticing that the advertising network kind of goes in peaks and valleys with the internet, right, as far as impressions go. So it kind of slows down overnight.
And then now we've used up half our minutes on the system, and we go, okay, we kind of need more minutes, and we don't know what's going to happen in the middle of the night, so we decided to do e-commerce at Black Hat, and we bought some more.
Not recommended. I broke my own rule.
But now we're at 250 gigs of traffic, and that's kind of a lot. And to give you an idea, and we're going to go through some of the live stuff here because we'll have a lot of time. See the metrics, or you probably want to cover this?
Yeah, so this is how you add funds to it, just to give you guys an idea. It's really that easy. Like, we're just throwing money into this thing, and it just keeps going.
We try to spend our speaker fee, but it's been hard.
Yeah, we were like, okay, cool, they're paying us, let's dump it right in. We were like, oh, it's Vegas. We didn't know how quick this all was going to work. Like, once we added money to it, we didn't know, okay, how fast until this turns around and starts actually DOSing something. So like, oh yeah, this whole idea, it's going to be Vegas. We're going to get the speaker fee and cash on the stage and slide it across and do this whole ad network thing and DOS our server. But it takes a little bit too long to do that on stage. But you can appreciate the theatric idea, I'm sure.
So we're tailing the log files live on our Apache AMI. So that's the requests as they're coming in. And this is the Apache status screen. It keeps dying because it's DOSed. So the permission denied is requesting an image that I just turned off the perms for.
Yeah,
I could turn it back on, but I don't want to show you my root password.
We did notice. So why not, man? This is a trusting crowd. We did turn the image off because we noticed that the actual hits were slowing down when we actually gave it an image, because we haven't mentioned this. We haven't even invoked that whole connection limit bypass.
Oh, yeah, we didn't use the Firefox hack.
This is all still just 6 at a time per browser. So we were really nervous to kind of push that big red button and start pushing the whole FTP bypass out there. We just didn't know what was going to happen. So we stayed on the side of legality, and this was impressive enough to us. So without even really trying and spending a lot of money, you can see right now that's live. We took the image away because it slowed down, because it was actually trying to load the image before moving on to the next 6 requests. So that 243 gigs you see kind of stayed the same in the past day, because we were like, okay, let's get this hit number back up. So when we met in the speaker room this morning, I think that was at 15 million.
Yeah.
And it's at 20 million now, a few hours later. Concurrent connections, because we're going to the 404 page again.
So the only reason we're not able to pump more traffic, because we just incremented.
That was good timing.
Oh. The server dies. So we're going to try to get bigger test platforms and funnel more traffic, because the only reason that's at 20 million, not at probably 100 or 1 billion, is because there's only one Apache server.
The server is pretty slow itself, right? So that's not that impressive, but you guys can kind of get an idea for the scale here, and if you could scale this up, it's really not that much money to do damage to normal websites out there on the internet.
So since we're here, should we DOS it?
Yeah.
With FTP DOS?
FTP, push the big red button.
We don't know what's going to happen. So we're pointing at the Amazon instance. So just So you can see, so that Matt's ads that he put on the network, it was pulling that code right there. So
that's the campaign.js. I named it campaign just to ease the approval process.
And you could,
it's my ad campaign. I'm so clever.
So yeah, there's a whole lot of assert traffic out there right now.
This was really hard, guys.
That's the hit. I almost dropped it.
Do not.
Okay, so
all this stuff flying by, that's all the ads right now. We couldn't stop that if we wanted to. It's just kind of out there right now. Until it hits its limit, I put the money in the machine. Some people come to Vegas, get off the plane, and start putting money in slot machines. We started putting money in ad networks. So hope you guys enjoy.
All right, so that's 400 looping FTP to the Amazon instance. I suppose I can put up the web developer stuff here so you can see it. Yeah, let's just reload that. Who knows what's going to happen? And hit it. Reload there. Hit. It's grinding. No way it's going to respond. Oh, there it goes.
Good. Where's the king? And it's gone.
So still tailing the logs. So I guess it's still logging, but the web server is effectively dead. The browser will time out eventually and free up the connections, and Apache will clean itself up with a whole bunch of like option star things you'll see in the logs. But it's it'll die pretty effectively.
That is the reason we didn't do the FTP thing live in the wild on the ad network. We didn't really know the effect of what would happen to the actual person's browsers. So this whole time, like I hope you guys realize, we did not hack anybody, right? We just used the way the web works and took down our own servers. So we stayed completely on the legal side here, but you can kind of get ideas of how this would get fun if you didn't. The other thing that we didn't even touch, right? So this approval process, we had relatively benign looking JavaScript, even if you kind of knew what was going on. But if you started using some of the other possible evil ideas that we went over, the code might start to look a little bit more suspicious. But we were talking about it. We didn't even touch adult ad networks, and they don't care, right? Well, like what goes in there, right? That's where drive-by malware goes to breed. So since we're not even doing drive-by malware, and that's easier to detect than what we're doing, we didn't think that it would be a problem, right? So,
all right. So
I think the quote was, "We didn't dip our toe into the porn networks."
Yeah. Before anything else you guys wanted to see here before we talk about maybe
What are the Apache logs for the FTP request?
Very good question. What are the Apache logs? On some Apache defaults, there is no log. I might be able to tail it here in this one here. Let me just loop this here and we'll see it. Let me zero that out and funnel it here. So this is OS 10 Apache. I downloaded and installed Apache. And let's hit it. Let's see. And make sure this is running. So
that's the local one.
Yeah, it's local. So on this one here, it doesn't log. On the Amazon server, for whatever reason, you'll see 408s with no URLs. Because it's not sending HTTP. It's not sending. It just says 408, and you don't know what's coming out to you unless you're running packet capture.
But it's still port 80, and it's still opening connections. A lot of them.
So yeah, it'll die.
Get back to the slides here.
All right. So yeah. So we got. Okay, we're good. So now. This is the stuff we do with staying on the right side of the law. Obviously, as Matt said, we could have gone much, much further. And then as it normally happens in the world of information security, advertising networks, they're not software developers over there. Believe us, they're not software developers. They run advertising networks, so they're advertising platforms, and there's actually advertising platform software, so you can be your own advertising network. And one of the ones they use out there that's quite popular is called OpenX Source. So you can go look it up. This is one many advertising networks use. And as it happens, just a couple of weeks ago, somebody had found vulnerabilities in them. So in case you didn't want to pay them money, you just wanted to exploit the advertising network, you certainly could.
Yeah.
So you hack the advertising network, load it up, and blast. And anybody that's viewing an ad on those networks at that point in time, you own them.
So I guess that is the one trace that would come back to us if we went down this road, was we did put the money in the machine that served up that ad. It's really hard to figure out what ad did this. all those ads are iframed, but it doesn't matter. So like, yeah, we could try to research like frame busting code and actually worry about hacking the browser, but that was not the point of our research. We were just trying to use the browser to hack other people, ourselves. Hack yourself first, I guess, right? So, yeah, but like we probably could break out of that and start hacking the people themselves, gain some persistence using local storage and some other things, but this didn't go there.
So this research will continue. Again, we're just using one Amazon AMI. We're going to get together with some of our partners out there and try to go after the DDoS protected websites and see how much traffic we can funnel at them, because again, we're not in the defense industry, we're in the offense industry. So we're going to start sending a lot of traffic that way and some follow-up stuff.
And we're actually going to try to do the hash cracking in the ad network, right? So we have metrics that give us a good idea of JavaScript can do this much this fast. We want to see correlate that to dollar amount, right? So how much per 50 cents can you crack? How many MD5 hashes per 50 cents can you crack through? So
because again, it just impressed the heck out of me. You can get to 1 million browsers, maybe not in a single moment in time, but you can get to 1 million browsers out there for $500.
Million browser botnet. Ta-da!
All right. So let's before we get to questions, let's just got to invoke Kaminsky. All right. So I've been working in web security for a while. I've said before that I think we have to break the web in order to secure it, because what it's designed to do now, unless we're able to break business models, it's really going to be difficult to secure this stuff now, because we're using the way the web was meant to be used. And so I was making these comments, and Dan, who's been right since 2010, he says, no one's breaking the web, dude. Not now, not ever. And so far, he's been right. And because you got to think about this particular problem. Whose problem is this? Is it the advertising network's problem? Is it the browser vendor's problem? Is it the website owner's problem? Maybe we don't even know whose problem it is, not really, but we also don't know whose responsibility it is. Like, this is kind of why we're here. You know, who fixes this?
Yeah, I mean, it's we're loading images. I think that's supposed to happen. So, yeah, we're just loading a lot of them very quickly. So, yeah, we've tossed around some ideas of who could impose limits where. Right, the connection limits in browsers, we got around them, but then we didn't even use that and wound up taking ourselves down. So, yeah, that was a protection, not for this. It was a performance thing, but that was a potential, hurdle for us, and it just didn't take that hard to jump over.
On the upside, for those of you that are running ad blockers, there's actually a security reason why you use an ad blocker now. So you just use ad blocker or disconnect, and and your browser won't be leveraged this particular way. But share the knowledge. We have 10 minutes or so for questions. Anybody have a question? Yes, sir.
So today
on the Amazon side.
Oh, on the Amazon side. Oh,
on the Amazon side, maybe $100. Maybe.
We don't even know yet.
We don't know yet.
Today was when we really dumped money into the advertising network to try to spike the numbers before the talk, and we put 75 in, and we haven't even used it before the talk. I was trying to get it to use as much as possible. Yeah. There seems to be like a percentage thing going on. How much you give it, it uses certain percentages in waves. So,
yes, sir. It goes to either the advertising network or the user's browser, not to us.
There might be some identifiable information of what advertising network it was and the user agent or things like that, but it's just the browser. It's like the IP, in our logs. Like I said, when our ads were getting approved, we were seeing the IP address of the approver, right? So we didn't see anything about us. So yeah.
So we'll take questions up here, so if you have some time. But thank you everybody for coming. Hope you liked it.